He was toasting his new bride when he spotted his pregnant ex-wife scrubbing tables with trembling hands. But when she collapsed, revealing triplets were coming, his perfect wedding turned into an emergency room. But before we dive into the full story, let me know where you're watching from and what time it is. Now, subscribe to the channel, and let's get started. The rain lashed against the windows of the luxury apartment in Beacon Hill, turning Boston's skyline into a blurry watercolor. Sophia Martinez's heart hammered against her ribs as the private elevator ascended to the penthouse. Her trembling fingers absently stroked the small but unmistakable curve of her 4-month pregnant belly beneath her coat. The elevator pinged softly, announcing her arrival at the 30th floor. Sophia took a deep breath, smoothing her damp hair and adjusting her simple dress. She had come directly from her shift at La Maison, the upscale French restaurant where she worked as a waitress, where she had first caught Jackson Reynolds' eye 8 months ago. The doors slid open to reveal Calvin, Jackson's personal butler, his expression carefully neutral as always. "Miss Martinez, Mr. Reynolds is expecting you in the study." Sophia nodded, following Calvin through the expansive penthouse. Every time she visited, the sheer opulence of Jackson's world struck her anew. The original paintings, the Italian marble floors, the floor-to-ceiling windows offering a commanding view of rain-soaked Boston. It was a world away from her shared apartment in Dorchester, where she carefully counted every dollar from her tips. Calvin paused at the heavy mahogany door of the study, announcing her presence before stepping aside. Sophia entered, her wet shoes squeaking slightly against the polished hardwood. Jackson Reynolds stood with his back to her, gazing out at the storm, a crystal tumbler of amber liquid in his hand. At 32, the heir and CEO of Reynolds Enterprises cut an imposing figure, tall, broad-shouldered, immaculately dressed in a tailored suit despite the late hour. He turned slowly, his handsome features illuminated by a flash of lightning. With deliberate precision, he adjusted the Patek Philippe watch on his wrist before acknowledging her presence. "Sophia." His voice was cool, controlled. "Would you care for a drink? Though I suppose in your condition that would be ill-advised." Her breath caught. "You know? Your message sounded urgent. I assumed it must be important." He took a measured sip of his whiskey. 30-year-old Macallan. A shame you can't appreciate it. The rain intensified outside, drumming against the windows like impatient fingers. Sophia clutched her purse tighter, gathering courage. "I'm pregnant, Jackson." The words hung in the air between them, as tangible as the humidity from the storm. 4 months. Thunder rolled across the sky, filling the silence that followed her announcement. Jackson's expression remained unchanged, his blue eyes, the same striking shade that had captivated her from their first meeting, revealing nothing. He placed his tumbler down with deliberate care on his mahogany desk. "And you're certain it's mine?" The question sliced through her like a blade. "Of course it's yours. There hasn't been anyone else. You know that." Jackson exhaled slowly, running a hand through his perfectly styled dark hair. "This is inconvenient, Sophia." "Inconvenient?" Her voice trembled. "I thought we talked about Barcelona next month. The villa you wanted to show me." A cold, humorless laugh escaped his lips. "That was a weekend diversion, nothing more. Surely you didn't think—" "Think what?" Sophia stepped forward, her hands protectively cradling her belly. "That you meant it when you said you loved me? That our relationship was real?" Jackson's face hardened. "Let's be realistic about what this was. You were an exotic distraction, a pleasant way to pass time, but a waitress? An immigrant without formal education?" He shook his head slowly. "You are not Reynolds' material, Sophia. You never were." Each word hammered into her heart. Outside, lightning split the sky, illuminating the cruel certainty in his eyes. "A pregnant immigrant waitress has no place in my life or my family's plans," he continued, his voice coldly efficient. "You're a mistake I can afford to pay to disappear." Sophia felt the air leave her lungs as if she'd been struck. She gripped the back of a leather chair to steady herself. But I thought we had something special. Special? Jackson's eyebrow arched elegantly. Did you really believe you were special? That I would introduce a service worker to my family? To my board members? His laugh was devoid of empathy. You will never be enough for someone like me, and this child would merely be a reminder of my greatest mistake. Tears welled in Sophia's eyes, mingling with the raindrops still clinging to her face from her walk from the taxi to the building. Jackson, please, we can figure this out. We don't have to tell anyone right away. We can… There is no we, Sophia. Jackson cut her off, reaching into his desk drawer. The sound of a checkbook opening seemed unnaturally loud in the tense silence. Let me make this simpler for you. The scratch of his pen against paper was the only sound besides Sophia's shaky breathing. He tore the check out with a precise movement and held it out to her. $50,000. Sufficient for a discreet abortion and a fresh start anywhere that isn't Boston. His tone was that of a businessman concluding a minor transaction. Or divided into smaller payments to raise this child away from me. Your choice, but you leave this apartment today. Sophia stared at the check, her vision blurring through tears. I don't want your money. I want you to be part of this. Our baby deserves… What this situation deserves is a clean resolution, Jackson interrupted. Take the check, Sophia. Be practical. Jackson, please. Tears streamed freely down her face now, mirroring the rain battering the windows. We love each other. You said you loved me. His expression remained unmoved. I said what men say to get what they want, and I got it. Now it's over. He pressed a button on his desk intercom. Calvin, I need you to escort a visitor out, and bring her belongings from the guest room as well. Sophia stood frozen, the check still extended between them like a chasm neither could cross. I trusted you. I gave you everything. And I compensated you generously. Jackson straightened his tie, already mentally moving on. Your things should be packed by now. I had Calvin do it while we talked. The study door opened and Calvin appeared, his face professionally blank. Behind him, Sophia could see 3 black garbage bags sitting in the hallway, everything she had gradually brought to Jackson's penthouse over their 8-month relationship. This way, Miss Martinez, Calvin said quietly. Sophia remained rooted to the spot, her mind struggling to process how her life had shattered so completely in less than 15 minutes. Jackson. Goodbye, Sophia. He had already picked up his phone, scrolling through messages as if she had already left. I trust you'll make the sensible choice. Calvin's gentle hand on her elbow finally broke her paralysis. Numbly, she took the check, crumpling it into her purse. The walk to the elevator felt like a death march, each step taking her further from the future she had foolishly imagined. In the hallway, Calvin handed her the garbage bags with an apologetic glance. I've called a taxi for you, miss. It should be waiting downstairs. 20 minutes later, Sophia stood on the sidewalk, the rain pouring mercilessly down her back, soaking through her thin coat. The taxi driver impatiently helped her load the garbage bags into the trunk, muttering about the weather. Sophia glanced up at the penthouse one last time, just in time to see Jackson's silhouette through the study window. He was on the phone, gesturing animatedly, as if merely concluding an inconvenient business deal. Where to, lady? The driver asked gruffly. Sophia had no answer. She couldn't return to her apartment. She'd given notice after spending more and more nights at Jackson's. Her savings were meager, her family thousands of miles away in the Dominican Republic, her work visa tied to her restaurant job. Dorchester Women's Shelter, she finally said, remembering a place a fellow waitress had once mentioned. Later that night, curled on a narrow bunk bed in the crowded shelter, Sophia finally allowed the full weight of her situation to crash over her. Alone in America, pregnant, with a temporary work visa nearing expiration, she had never felt more abandoned. The sounds of other women's quiet sobs and murmured conversations formed a melancholy backdrop to her own despair. She reached into her purse, fingers finding the crumpled check. $50,000, Jackson's price for her disappearance, for his child's erasure from his life. "My baby," she whispered, hands cradling her small bump. "I promise we will survive." Her tears had finally stopped, replaced by something harder, more resolute. "He may not want us, but we will show him. We will show the world what he threw away." As the storm continued to rage outside the shelter's thin windows, Sofia Martinez made a silent vow. She would not be defined by this rejection. She would not disappear. The man who had deemed her insufficient would one day witness just how wrong he had been. That stormy night in Boston, Sofia couldn't possibly imagine that the man who had discarded her as not enough would one day watch helplessly as she commanded a billion-dollar empire built from absolute zero. The crumpled check burned in Sofia's pocket as she stepped out of the women's shelter the next morning. The storm had passed, but a persistent drizzle continued, as if Boston itself wept for her situation. With one hand protectively cradling her belly, she walked toward the bus stop, mentally calculating her rapidly dwindling options. 3 weeks later, Sofia stood in the manager's office at La Maison, the upscale French restaurant where she had worked for nearly 2 years, where she had first caught Jackson's eye while serving his table. Maurice, the restaurant manager, avoided her gaze as he delivered the news. "I am sorry, Sofia, but your condition is becoming noticeable." His eyes flicked to her now visible pregnancy bump. "Our clientele expects a certain image, you understand? The uniform no longer fits properly, and customers have commented." "I can adjust the uniform," Sofia offered desperately. "I can take shifts in the back, perhaps help with preparation instead of serving." Maurice shook his head, sliding an envelope across his desk. 2 weeks severance. We appreciate your service, but your pregnancy does not align with the image we wish to project." That night, Sofia returned to her tiny rented room in a shared apartment to find an eviction notice taped to her door. Her roommate, Claudia, watched with thinly veiled discomfort as Sofia read the landlord's ultimatum. "The contract is clear, Miss Martinez. No children in this property," Claudia recited, as if she'd rehearsed the speech. "Linda and I can't have a baby crying all night when we work early shifts. The landlord said we'd all be evicted if you stay past the end of the month." Sofia nodded numbly, too exhausted to argue. "I understand. I'll find somewhere else." But somewhere else proved elusive for a visibly pregnant immigrant with dwindling savings and a work visa tied to a job she no longer had. The following week, Sofia spent 8 hours in an endless line at the immigration office, her swollen feet aching as she clutched a newspaper filled with circled employment advertisements. "Your work visa is sponsored by La Maison," the immigration officer explained tonelessly. "Without employment there, you have 60 days to secure another sponsor or return to the Dominican Republic." Returning home wasn't an option. Her mother's medical bills had consumed most of the money Sofia had sent back over the years. There was nothing to return to, no safety net waiting to catch her. Desperation drove her to accept 3 jobs no one else wanted. Pre-dawn office cleaning shifts from 3 to 7 in the morning, where she scrubbed toilets and emptied trash bins in empty corporate towers. From 8 to 4, she stood behind the counter at Suds and Duds laundromat, breathing in suffocating steam while hauling heavy baskets for impatient customers. Weekends and evenings, she packed groceries at Save-A-Lot supermarket, her feet screaming in protest as she smiled mechanically at happy families purchasing supplies she could barely afford. In a tiny rented room barely larger than a closet, Sofia counted coins by candlelight to save electricity. 4 hours of sleep per night was her maximum, often interrupted by the baby's movements or the crushing anxiety of her circumstances. Every penny was meticulously accounted for, every expense questioned, every purchase deferred if possible. "Just a little longer," she whispered to her growing belly. "Mama is working hard for us." When the 6th month of pregnancy arrived, Sofia visited East Boston Community Clinic, the only place she could afford with her dwindling resources. The elderly ultrasound technician's eyes widened as she moved the wand across Sophia's abdomen. "Oh my," the woman said, adjusting her glasses. "Have you been experiencing more movement than usual?" Sophia nodded, suddenly anxious. "Is something wrong with my baby?" The technician smiled gently. "Not wrong, dear. Just more than expected. Congratulations, Miss Martinez. You're having triplets." The room seemed to spin around Sophia. "Triplets? 3 babies?" "3 healthy babies," the technician confirmed, pointing to the screen. "See here, here, and here, 3 separate heartbeats, all strong." Sophia stumbled out of the clinic in a daze, the ultrasound images clutched in her trembling hand. 3 babies, 3 mouths to feed, 3 lives depending entirely on her. The narrow path she had been navigating had just become exponentially more difficult. That night, sitting on the edge of her bed in the tiny rented room in Roxbury, Sophia finally unfolded Jackson's crumpled check. For weeks, she had sworn to herself she would never use it, would never accept the money of silence. But now, she wasn't thinking of herself. She was thinking of 3 innocent lives. "It's not for me," she said to the empty room. "It's for them to start with dignity." The next morning, with the check deposited in a new account, Sophia sought out Eliza Chen, an immigration attorney she had met at the women's shelter, a formidable woman who specialized in helping vulnerable immigrants navigate the system. $50,000, Eliza mused, reviewing Sophia's situation in her cramped office. Not life-changing money in Boston, especially with triplets coming, but enough to secure your status and start something small. "Something small?" Sophia echoed. "Half for legal work to secure you an entrepreneur visa," Eliza explained. "The other half is capital to start a legitimate business. What skills do you have beyond restaurant work?" Sophia thought of the meals she prepared for fellow residents at the shelter, the organizational systems she'd created for her multiple jobs, the network of other struggling mothers she'd met. "I know what it's like to have nothing and need everything," she said slowly. "I know what women like me need most: reliable food, childcare assistance, someone who understands our situation." 2 weeks later, Sophia Serve was born, a modest service providing prepared meals and basic assistance to single mothers. With Eliza's help, Sophia secured a tiny commercial kitchen space in Dorchester and began cooking affordable, nutritious meals for delivery to working mothers. "When you have nothing, you have everything to gain," Eliza said, signing the incorporation documents as Sophia's legal advisor. Working 16-hour days despite her advancing pregnancy, Sophia cooked, packed, and delivered meals herself. She created a primitive scheduling system to help mothers coordinate childcare exchanges. Her client base grew solely through word of mouth, one struggling mother telling another about the affordable service that understood their needs. At 8 months pregnant, carrying triplets, Sophia was a striking figure as she made her deliveries, her small frame dominated by her enormous belly, her face showing both exhaustion and determination. Each night, she collapsed into bed, every muscle aching, only to rise again a few hours later to start cooking for the next day. When the contractions started prematurely one Tuesday afternoon, Sophia was alone in her apartment, preparing meal plans for the following week. The first sharp pain made her gasp, but she dismissed it as practice contractions. By the third, coming barely 5 minutes apart, she knew. With trembling hands, she called a taxi, gathering the small hospital bag she had prepared. "Massachusetts General, please," she told the driver, her voice tight with pain. "The emergency entrance." "Lady, you okay?" the driver asked, eyeing her in the rearview mirror as another contraction made her double over. "The babies are coming," she managed between clenched teeth. "Please hurry." At the hospital, events moved in a blur. Nurses rushed her to labor and delivery as her contractions intensified. "Do you want us to call someone?" a kind-faced nurse asked, holding Sophia's hand through a particularly painful contraction. "The father? Family?" Sophia shook her head, tears streaming down her face, from pain, from loneliness, from the overwhelming reality of what was happening. "I don't have anyone to call. I'm alone." The nurse squeezed her hand firmly. "You're not alone anymore," she promised. "We're here with you." 16 grueling hours later, exhausted beyond anything she had ever experienced, Sophia gazed at 3 tiny beings in incubators, born at 32 weeks, each weighing less than 4 pounds. Gabriel, Miguel, and Raphael, she had chosen names of archangels, messengers of strength. All 3 with Jackson's distinctive blue eyes, a reminder she would transform into motivation, not pain. "They'll need to stay in the NICU for several weeks," the neonatologist explained gently. "They're doing well for their gestational age, but they need time to develop properly." For the next month, Sophia split her time between the hospital and desperate attempts to keep Sophia Serve running. She pumped breast milk for the babies, sleeping on chairs in the NICU, returning to her tiny apartment only to shower and change clothes. Regular clients stepped in to help, taking over meal preparations, organizing a rotation of support. The community of mothers she had built rallied around her, demonstrating the power of the network she had created. On the day Gabriel, the smallest of the triplets, was finally strong enough to be held properly, Sophia sat in a rocking chair in the NICU, cradling him while watching Miguel and Raphael sleeping in their incubators. His tiny hand wrapped around her finger with surprising strength. "I will build an empire for you," she whispered fiercely. "And one day, that man will look at what he threw away and understand it was the biggest mistake of his life. Not for revenge, my angels, but because he was wrong about everything, about me, about you, about what we are capable of doing." As Gabriel's tiny chest rose and fell against hers, Sophia's mind was already racing with plans. How to expand Sophia Serve, how to create a proper support system for mothers like her, how to transform her experience into something that would change lives. The path ahead was daunting, almost impossible, but looking at her 3 miracle babies, Sophia knew with absolute certainty that they would not merely survive, they would thrive. While she rocked Gabriel in that hospital chair, Sophia couldn't possibly know that these 3 premature babies would one day become the heirs to a technology empire that would make Jackson Reynolds look like a mere secondary player in the business world. The tiny apartment in Boston's Dorchester neighborhood barely contained the 3 second-hand cribs arranged in a tight semicircle. Sophia Martinez sat cross-legged on her fold-out sofa bed, her laptop balanced precariously on a stack of parenting books, the screen's blue glow illuminating her exhausted face. The digital clock on her microwave showed 4:30 in the morning, the only time her apartment was truly quiet, the only time she could work uninterrupted. "Just 2 more orders," she whispered, careful not to wake the 6-month-old triplets sleeping mere feet away. Her fingers flew across the keyboard, finalizing meal plans for Sophia Serve's growing client list of single mothers. She paused, rubbing her eyes, which burned from lack of sleep. 3 hours of rest was all she could afford in her relentless schedule. The day ahead loomed like a mountain. Wake at 5, prepare 20 meal packages, feed and dress the boys, deliver the first round of meals, return for the boys' doctor appointment, work on bookkeeping during their nap, prepare the second round of deliveries, respond to emails, plan tomorrow's meals, collapse into bed at midnight, only to start again a few hours later. A soft whimper from Raphael's crib pulled her attention from the screen. She moved with practiced efficiency, reaching him before his fussing could wake his brothers. "Shh, mi angelito," she soothed, lifting his warm little body against her shoulder. His blue eyes, so painfully like Jackson's, blinked up at her in the dim light. 15 minutes later, with Raphael settled back to sleep, Sophia returned to her laptop. The Sophia Serve spreadsheet showed modest but consistent growth. 35 regular clients now, all single mothers struggling to balance work and childcare. Her service provided not just meals but a lifeline, something she understood intimately. "Time to scale," she murmured, opening a new document. For weeks, an idea had been forming in her mind. expanding Sophia Serve beyond meal delivery to a complete support network for single mothers. She began typing rapidly, outlining a rudimentary app concept that would connect mothers to resources, flexible jobs, and emotional support. The sun was rising when Miguel and Gabriel began stirring. Sophia saved her work and closed the laptop. Another day in her impossible balancing act had begun. 2 hours later, Sophia maneuvered the cumbersome triple stroller through the narrow doorway of the Boston Public Library. The children's section librarian, Ms. Patel, greeted the quartet with a warm smile. "My favorite visitors," she said, bending to tickle Miguel's cheek. "Your usual table is open." "Thank you," Sophia replied gratefully. The library had become her office, classroom, and sanctuary rolled into one, a place where she could study while the boys played quietly. She settled the triplets with soft toys on a colorful mat, then spread her materials across the table, programming textbooks borrowed through interlibrary loan, notebooks filled with meticulous notes, and her precious laptop, a refurbished model donated by a grateful client whose custody battle Sophia Serve had helped through with meal support and childcare coordination. "Intro to App Development," she read, opening the thick textbook. Her knowledge of coding was entirely self-taught, gleaned from library books, free online courses completed during the boys' naps, and the occasional guidance from tech-savvy clients who traded knowledge for meals. "Look at them, so well-behaved." An elderly woman passing by stopped to admire the triplets. Gabriel had taken his first steps a month earlier and now toddled determinedly between his toys, while Miguel observed everything with thoughtful intensity. Raphael, the analytical one, systematically stacked and unstacked colored rings, his tiny brow furrowed in concentration. "Thank you," Sophia smiled. "They're my little team." 8 hours later, after a day split between library study and meal deliveries, Sophia sat at her kitchen counter cutting vegetables for tomorrow's meals. The triplets were finally asleep after their evening routine of bath, books, and lullabies. Her phone buzzed with a text from Eliza Chen. "Don't forget tomorrow's Community Business Forum. Bring your app concept. 10 a.m. at the Roxbury Community Center." Sophia glanced at the triplets' cribs. She had been planning to use tomorrow for catch-up cooking and her monthly deep-cleaning jobs that supplemented Sophia Serve's still modest income. Bringing toddlers to a business forum seemed impossible, yet missing the networking opportunity felt equally unthinkable. She made her decision. Sleep would have to wait. The community center hummed with activity as local entrepreneurs displayed their small businesses. Sophia stood nervously beside her simple poster board displaying Sophia Serve's logo and mission statement. The triplets, dressed in matching blue overalls she had found at a thrift store, sat remarkably well-behaved in their stroller, drawing admiring glances. "So you provide meals for single mothers?" asked a woman in a business suit, examining Sophia's display. "That was how we started," Sophia explained, gaining confidence as she spoke about her passion. "But we're expanding to a complete support network. I'm developing an app that will connect single parents to resources, flexible jobs, and each other." She demonstrated the rudimentary prototype on her laptop, a basic interface she had coded during countless late nights. "This is impressive," the woman commented, "especially considering—" She glanced meaningfully at the triplets. "Being a single mother of triplets is precisely what qualifies me to create this," Sophia responded with quiet dignity. "I understand these needs because I live them every day." Later that afternoon, riding the bus home with the sleepy triplets, Sophia felt a flicker of hope. 3 different local business owners had expressed interest in her concept, and a community college professor had offered to connect her with student developers who might help refine her app prototype. The bus passed a newsstand displaying the Boston Business Journal. Her breath caught at the headline visible even from the bus window. "Reynolds Enterprises announces expansion into luxury condos." Below it, a photo showed Jackson Reynolds cutting a ribbon at a new development, a beautiful blonde woman on his arm. Sophia forced herself to look away, focusing instead on her sleeping sons. Her future, their future, had nothing to do with Jackson Reynolds or his world. "Look at you three," she whispered to her sleeping boys. "You are so much more than he will ever know." 3 months later, at 2 in the morning, Sophia jolted awake at her desk, her cheek sticking to the keyboard where she had fallen asleep while coding. The apartment was silent except for the gentle breathing of the triplets, now approaching their first birthday. Her neck ached from the awkward position, but excitement quickly overrode her discomfort. The app prototype was working. 6 weeks of late-night coding sessions had produced a functional basic version of what she now called Mother's Lift, a platform that allowed single mothers to coordinate childcare exchanges, share job opportunities, access legal resources, and support each other through forums. Sophia stretched, then shuffled to the kitchenette for her third cup of coffee. Tomorrow, or rather today, 5 women from the shelter where she had once stayed would be testing the app, providing crucial feedback before she expanded the user base. Morning arrived too quickly. The triplets, now crawling efficiently and pulling themselves up on furniture, required constant vigilance. Sophia managed to feed, dress, and entertain them while simultaneously preparing for her focus group. "Mama, Mama!" Gabriel called, reaching for her from his play area. At 13 months, he was already saying several words, usually leading the verbal development among his brothers. "Yes, mi amor, Mama's here," she reassured him, checking her watch anxiously. Eliza was arriving in 20 minutes to babysit during the focus group, and Sophia still needed to prepare the presentation materials. The doorbell rang just as she finished setting up her laptop on the kitchen table. Eliza entered with her usual efficient energy, immediately scooping up Miguel, who had crawled to greet her. "Go change," Eliza instructed, eyeing Sophia's food-stained t-shirt. "I've got the boys. This is an important day." 15 minutes later, Sophia welcomed 5 women from her original support network at the shelter. They gathered around her small kitchen table while the triplets played with Eliza in the living area. "This could help thousands like us," said Marisol, a single mother of 2 who worked night shifts as a hospital janitor. She scrolled through the app interface, her eyes widening at the childcare exchange feature. "Do you know how many shifts I've lost because my sitter canceled last minute?" "That's exactly why I built it," Sophia explained, her exhaustion momentarily forgotten as she demonstrated how users could send emergency childcare requests to their trusted network. "We're stronger together than alone." By the time the women left, Sophia had 3 pages of notes for improvements. The validation of her concept energized her beyond the capacity of caffeine. This wasn't just a business idea, it was a lifeline she was creating. "They loved it," she told Eliza, collapsing onto the sofa as the lawyer prepared to leave. "Every single one of them wants to use it when it launches." "I'm not surprised," Eliza replied, gathering her briefcase. "You've created something remarkable, Sophia, and you did it while raising 3 babies alone." 6 months later, Sophia stood nervously at a local community business showcase, the Mother's Lift display garnering steady interest. The triplets, now almost 2, charmed visitors in their matching outfits, taking toddling steps around the booth under Sophia's watchful eye. "Excuse me," a stylishly dressed woman approached, smartphone in hand. "I'm Amanda Wells from Parenting Now blog. May I ask about your app? It looks fascinating." Sophia's heart raced. Parenting Now had over 1 million followers across various platforms. "Of course," she replied, keeping one eye on Raphael, who was investigating the edge of the display table. For 20 minutes, Sophia explained Mother's Lift's mission and functionality while simultaneously preventing the triplets from dismantling the booth. Amanda took notes and photos, clearly impressed not just by the app, but by Sophia's ability to articulate her vision while managing 3 active toddlers. "This is revolutionary," Amanda concluded. "Mind if I feature it in tomorrow's blog? My readers will go crazy for this." The next day changed everything. Sophia was delivering meals when her phone began buzzing incessantly. Checking it at a stoplight, she nearly dropped it in shock. 50,000 app downloads in 3 hours. Her primitive server had crashed under the traffic. Amanda's blog post had gone viral, describing Mother's Lift as the support system every single parent has dreamed of, created by a superhero single mom of triplets. That evening, while the boys played in their bath, Sophia gave her first official interview via Skype to a tech blog. The triplets, freshly pajama-clad and remarkably cooperative, sat beside her on the sofa, occasionally waving at the screen. "How do you balance motherhood with startup life?" the interviewer asked. Before Sophia could answer, Gabriel looked up at her and asked the question that stopped her heart. "Mama, why no papa like other boys?" The interviewer's eyes widened, but Sophia maintained her composure. Pulling Gabriel onto her lap, she answered honestly, knowing her response would be published but caring more about her son's understanding. "Because some families are different," she explained gently. "We're 4 warriors, aren't we? The Fantastic Four." The boys giggled at their familiar family nickname. Crisis averted for the moment. Sophia redirected the interview skillfully, but Gabriel's innocent question lingered in her mind long after the boys were asleep. That night, checking her new business email, Sophia discovered a message that would change their trajectory. "Ms. Martinez, I'm Victor Mendez from Horizon Ventures. I'd like to discuss a potential $500,000 investment in Mother's Lift. Your concept and story are exactly what we look for in founders." Her hand trembled as she forwarded the email to Eliza for legal review. $500,000. The possibility was dizzying. Opening a new browser tab to research Horizon Ventures, Sophia's attention was caught by a Boston Globe headline, "Reynolds-Huntington Wedding Unites Banking and Real Estate Dynasties." The photo showed Jackson smiling beside Caroline Huntington, daughter of Boston's oldest banking family. Sophia closed the tab without reading further. Her path and Jackson's had diverged permanently, and she had no time or energy to waste on his life. The next evening, with the triplets asleep on a conference room sofa, Sophia signed the investment documents that would transform Sophia Serve into the newly incorporated Sophia Rise, a name that reflected both her personal journey and her mission to elevate others. While Jackson consolidated his position in Boston's traditional elite through marriage, he had no idea that just a few miles away, his former lover was planting the seeds of a company that would revolutionize social assistance technology and forever change the power balance between them. The Horizon Ventures investment transformed Sophia Rise from dream to reality overnight. Within weeks, Sophia found herself signing a lease on a modest office space in Brooklyn, a stark contrast to her years of working from her kitchen table. The move from Boston had been bittersweet but necessary. New York offered opportunities Boston couldn't match for both her growing company and her extraordinary children. "Welcome to Sophia Rise," she whispered, standing alone in the empty office space. A handmade sign, crafted during a rare free hour between the boys' bedtime and her own collapse into exhaustion, hung slightly crooked on the door. "Sophia Rise, elevating those who were knocked down." The blank walls and bare floors would soon become the headquarters of something revolutionary. Sophia closed her eyes, allowing herself a moment to envision the future. Staff working at computers, mothers finding support, her vision expanding beyond what she alone could accomplish. Her phone buzzed, breaking the reverie. Monica, a single mother she'd met at the shelter years ago, had accepted the position as her executive assistant, Sophia Rise's first official hire beyond Sophia herself. "I won't let you down," Monica's text read. "See you tomorrow, boss." The word boss made Sophia smile. From waitress to CEO in 3 years, with triplets in tow. Jackson Reynolds would never believe it. The modest 2-bedroom apartment in Brooklyn became their new home. Though still far from luxurious, it offered what their previous cramped quarters couldn't: space for the boys to move, a separate bedroom for them, and a small dedicated office nook for Sophia. She'd splurged on a second-hand desk and ergonomic chair. her first acknowledgement that Sophia Rise was a legitimate business deserving of proper equipment. 2 weeks after the move, Sophia stood at the gates of Little Scholars Academy, clutching enrollment papers and trying to control her emotions. The triplets, now 3 years old, wore carefully selected outfits, the most expensive clothing they'd ever owned, purchased specifically for this milestone. "Are you ready, my angels?" she asked, kneeling to straighten Gabriel's tiny tie. The 3 identical faces looked back at her with matching expressions of solemn excitement. "Ready, Mama," Gabriel answered for all of them, as he often did. Always the leader, he stood slightly ahead of his brothers, his posture mirroring Sophia's own determination. As she watched them walk into their classroom, Sophia pressed her lips together to stop them from trembling. These 3 miracles, born premature, raised in poverty, were starting school. They were healthy, happy, and thriving despite every obstacle. "Ms. Martinez?" the headmistress approached. "We need to discuss financial arrangements." Reality crashed back. Even with the partial scholarship the school had offered, the tuition stretched her budget to breaking point. The investment from Horizon Ventures was earmarked for business development, not personal expenses. Sophia squared her shoulders and followed the administrator to her office, calculator ready to negotiate payment plans that wouldn't bankrupt her fledgling company. 3 weeks later, Sophia sat across from a panel of potential investors in a sleek Manhattan conference room, her simple blazer and modest jewelry contrasting sharply with their bespoke suits and luxury watches. Her presentation on Mother's Lift's growth projections had been flawless, the culmination of countless practice sessions conducted while cooking dinner or folding laundry. "Impressive concept," said a silver-haired man, adjusting his glasses. "But I'm concerned about scalability. How does a single mother without formal technology education plan to grow this beyond a niche market?" The question, delivered with polite skepticism, was familiar. This was the 4th such meeting, and each time, some version of the same doubt emerged. How could someone like her succeed in tech? "The same way I've managed triplets on my own while building this company," Sophia replied with quiet confidence. "Strategic planning, efficient systems, and recognizing when to leverage expertise beyond my own. Our new development team includes 2 senior programmers from Google, and our advisory board includes women who've scaled companies to global reach." The investors exchanged glances, impressed by her answer but still hesitant. By meeting's end, they committed to continuing the conversation rather than immediately writing a check. Another soft rejection wrapped in corporate courtesy. In the taxi afterward, Sophia allowed herself a moment of frustration. The pattern was becoming clear. Her gender, background, and motherhood status were seen as liabilities rather than strengths. She was a heartwarming story, not a serious entrepreneur, at least in their eyes. Her phone chimed with a text from the triplets' teacher requesting a meeting. Sophia's heart dropped, immediately switching from CEO to mother mode, all business concerns temporarily forgotten. That afternoon, sitting in tiny chairs in the preschool classroom, Sophia listened with growing amazement as Miss Chen outlined what she'd observed. "Gabriel has completed math workbooks meant for 2nd graders, Miss Chen explained, showing Sophia a worksheet filled with multiplication problems solved in her son's careful handwriting. "And this morning, he helped another child understand division concepts that I haven't even introduced to the class." Sophia stared at the evidence of her son's extraordinary abilities, pride mingling with concern about what this might mean for his education. "Miguel's musical abilities are equally remarkable," Miss Chen continued. "After hearing a Mozart piece once during music time, he reproduced it perfectly on the classroom piano. The music teacher was stunned." "And Raphael?" Sophia asked, though she already suspected what was coming. Miss Chen smiled. "Yesterday our computer crashed during digital learning time. Raphael not only diagnosed the problem but fixed it, explaining something about memory allocation that frankly I didn't understand. He's 5 years old, Ms. Martinez, and he's debugging computer systems." That evening, after tucking the boys into bed, Sophia researched schools for gifted children, her excitement fading as she noted the tuition costs. Even with scholarships, the specialized education her sons deserved seemed financially impossible without sacrificing the company's growth. Late into the night, Sophia pored over business textbooks, programming manuals, and psychology research, building her knowledge base while her sons slept. A marketing textbook, 3 programming manuals, and a stack of business journals covered her small desk, sticky notes marking important passages. Her laptop screen displayed half-completed code for Mother's Lift's next update, a feature allowing single mothers to find emergency childcare within their trusted network. The coffee had gone cold hours ago, but Sophia barely noticed as she toggled between coding and studying, determined to overcome her lack of formal education through sheer persistence. 4 hours of sleep would have to suffice again. 6 months into leading Sophia Rise, Sophia faced her first major crisis. The server hosting Mother's Lift crashed during a usage spike, leaving thousands of mothers temporarily without access to the resources they depended on. Panicked messages flooded her phone as women across the country found themselves suddenly cut off from their support network. In her office, surrounded by her small but dedicated team, Sophia coordinated the emergency response. Raphael, visiting the office after preschool, sat quietly in the corner, watching the adults with intense concentration. "The backup server isn't responding either," Monica reported, hanging up with their hosting provider. "They're estimating 4 hours minimum before restoration." "4 hours is too long," Sophia replied, frustration evident. "We have mothers counting on us for childcare exchanges happening right now." Raphael tugged at her sleeve. "Mama, can I see?" he asked, pointing at the error message on her screen. Sophia absently lifted him onto her lap, too focused on the crisis to refuse. To everyone's surprise, Raphael studied the screen intently, then pointed to a line of code visible in the diagnostic window. "That number is wrong," he said simply. "Should be bigger." The lead developer leaned closer, examining where Raphael was pointing. His eyes widened. "He's right. The memory allocation parameter is set too low for our current user base." His fingers flew over the keyboard, making the adjustment. "How did you see that?" Raphael shrugged. "Numbers should match. These don't." 20 minutes later, the system was back online. Sophia hugged Raphael tightly, equal parts proud and astonished at her 5-year-old son's intuitive understanding of complex systems. The following week, Sophia sat for her first interview with Tech Forward magazine, a publication focusing on emerging technologies. The triplets, unusually subdued after stern coaching about Mama's important meeting, played quietly nearby with tablets loaded with educational games. "How do you balance motherhood with running a growing startup?" the interviewer asked, the standard question Sophia had come to expect. Before she could answer, her phone rang with an unknown number. Normally she would ignore it, but anticipating calls from potential investors, she excused herself to answer. "Ms. Martinez? This is Dr. Harriman from Bright Horizons Academy. We've reviewed your son's assessments and I'd like to discuss potential placement. Their scores are exceptional." That evening, sitting on the floor of their small living room, Sophia showed the boys photographs of her family in the Dominican Republic. Her mother's weathered face, the modest house where she grew up, the neighborhood where she had played as a child. "This is where Mama comes from," she explained as the boys crowded around the album. "Your abuela had to work very hard, just like I do." "Why don't we visit her?" Miguel asked, tracing his grandmother's face with a gentle finger. Sophia swallowed the lump in her throat. "She's in heaven now, mi amor. But she would have loved you 3 so much." "Did she know about us?" Gabriel asked. "No," Sophia admitted. "She went to heaven before you were born. But I know she watches over us." Raphael, always the most practical, asked the question Sophia had been dreading. "What about our father's family? Do they have pictures too?" Sophia took a deep breath. "Your father made a choice not to be part of our family. Sometimes adults make decisions that hurt others, but that doesn't reflect on you. You three are perfect exactly as you are." The conversation shifted as Raphael spotted a photo of Sophia as a child, but the question lingered in the air, one she knew would return with increasing frequency as the boys grew older. As Mother's Lift approached its 1 millionth user, Sophia celebrated with a simple ritual. A homemade chocolate cake in their small kitchen, the boys singing "Happy Birthday" to the company baby, as they called it. The milestone that would have been celebrated with champagne and speeches in traditional companies was marked instead with sticky fingers and chocolate-smeared smiles, perfectly fitting for a business built around motherhood. Later that week, a notification that would change everything appeared in Sophia's inbox. The boys' teacher had submitted their names for consideration at 3 prestigious schools for gifted children, schools far beyond what Sophia could afford, but which offered scholarships for exceptional talents. "We believe your sons would thrive in an environment designed for their unique abilities," the teacher wrote. "These schools can provide challenges that standard education simply cannot." The same afternoon, an email arrived from Tech Forward Accelerator. "We have the pleasure of offering you a place in our program, which includes $5 million in funding and mentorship from industry leaders." The opportunity was extraordinary, but accepting meant relocating again, restructuring the company and making difficult decisions about the boys' education. The accelerator program would demand even more of Sophia's limited time during a crucial developmental period for her sons. The following Saturday, Sophia visited the Manhattan Academy for Exceptional Learners, one of the schools that had expressed interest in the triplets. The campus was breathtaking, state-of-the-art facilities, small class sizes, specialized instruction tailored to gifted children. The tuition made her physically wince, but the admissions director spoke encouragingly about full scholarships for truly extraordinary talents. That evening, standing at the window of their Brooklyn apartment, Sophia gazed at the Manhattan skyline glittering across the river. The tech-forward offer represented everything she had worked toward: validation, resources, connections that could propel Sophia Rise to the next level. The specialized schools could give her sons the education their brilliant minds deserved. "We're moving to Manhattan," she told the boys the next morning. "Mama has an amazing opportunity, and there's a special school that wants you three." Their excited chatter filled the apartment as Sophia silently accepted the tech-forward offer on her phone, her eyes fixed on the future rising before them. By accepting the accelerator position that would transform Sophia Rise into a cutting-edge technology company, Sophia didn't know she was just 3 years away from her first Forbes cover, where she would be called the Latina Phoenix of Tech, a title that would one day reach Jackson Reynolds' hands. The glass doors of the Tech Forward Accelerator headquarters slid open as Sophia Martinez stepped into the sleek lobby, momentarily overwhelmed by the transition from Brooklyn's modest familiarity to Manhattan's gleaming promise. 3 months had passed since accepting their offer, and today marked her official presentation to the accelerator's mentors, a crucial moment that would set the trajectory for Sophia Rise's future. "Ms. Martinez, welcome," a young associate greeted her. "The panel is ready whenever you are." Sophia smoothed her newly purchased blazer, still budget-conscious but a definite upgrade from her previous wardrobe, and followed the associate through a corridor lined with success stories, framed magazine covers featuring accelerator alumni who had transformed into tech titans. In the presentation room, 5 industry veterans sat expectantly, their expressions ranging from polite interest to barely concealed skepticism. Sophia connected her laptop with steady hands despite her racing heart. "Mother's Lift isn't just an app," she began, her voice finding strength as she spoke about her passion. "It's an ecosystem of survival and prosperity. We're creating a comprehensive platform that addresses every aspect of single parenthood, from emergency childcare networks to job opportunities, housing assistance to legal resources." As Sophia navigated through her presentation, the initial skepticism in the room gradually transformed into genuine engagement. By the time she concluded, even the most doubtful mentor was leaning forward with interest. "Your user growth is impressive," noted a former Silicon Valley executive, especially considering your limited marketing budget. Our growth is organic, Sophia explained. Single mothers trust recommendations from other single mothers more than traditional advertising. Each satisfied user brings an average of 3 new users to the platform. After the presentation, Sophia rushed across town to collect the triplets from their new school. The Manhattan Academy for Exceptional Learners had accepted all 3 boys with full scholarships after their entrance assessments had broken several school records. Her new routine was even more demanding than before. Rising at 4:30 each morning, Sophia worked before the boys awakened, prepared their breakfast, accompanied them to school, worked uninterrupted until 5 in the evening, then dedicated herself exclusively to motherhood until 8, when the boys went to bed. Only then did she return to work, often continuing until midnight or later. The sacrifices were bearing fruit. Under the accelerator's guidance, Mother's Lift evolved from a basic support app into a sophisticated platform. The user base grew exponentially, and initial partnerships with corporate employers seeking flexible workers began generating sustainable revenue. 6 months into the accelerator program, Sophia faced her first major public test, presenting at the Women in Tech conference. Backstage at the convention center, she adjusted her blazer, purchased on sale but carefully tailored to appear more expensive, and reviewed her notes one final time. 5 minutes, Ms. Martinez, a stage manager called. Sophia's phone buzzed with a good luck text from Monica, who was watching the triplets. The boys had drawn a picture of their mother on a stage with a crown on her head. Smiling at the image, Sophia tucked away her phone as her name was announced. The spotlight momentarily blinded her as she took the stage before hundreds of industry professionals. The nerves dissolved as soon as she began speaking about Mother's Lift's mission. "We didn't create just an app," she declared. "We created an ecosystem of survival and prosperity. For too many women, particularly single mothers, the existing systems are designed for them to fail. We're redesigning the landscape so they can succeed." The presentation resonated powerfully. When Sophia concluded, the applause was immediate and enthusiastic. As she mingled afterward, multiple company representatives approached with partnership proposals. "Impressive presentation," a middle-aged venture capitalist commented, extending his business card. "Your platform has remarkable potential. Who handles the actual programming? Your CTO must be brilliant." The familiar assumption that a woman, particularly a Latina single mother, couldn't possibly be the technical mind behind the platform, no longer surprised Sophia. "I program most of it myself, sir," she replied with polite firmness. "MIT and Stanford both approached me about guest lecturing in their computer science departments last month." His expression shifted from condescension to surprise, then to genuine interest. "I stand corrected. We should talk about your next funding round." The accelerator period transformed Sophia Rise from promising startup to recognized innovator. With strategic guidance and substantial funding, Sophia expanded her team to 15 employees, all working from their new offices in a converted warehouse space in Lower Manhattan. The triplets, now 7 years old, thrived in their specialized education environment. Their extraordinary talents, merely hints at age 3, blossomed into undeniable gifts that astonished even experienced educators. On a crisp autumn Saturday, Sophia sat in an auditorium filled with parents and educators, watching Gabriel step forward to receive his trophy as the youngest ever national champion in the Elementary Mathematics Olympiad. Tears blurred her vision as her 7-year-old son, poised and articulate beyond his years, delivered a brief acceptance speech. "I want to thank my mother," Gabriel concluded, his blue eyes finding Sophia in the audience, "who taught me that problems always have solutions if you keep working on them." 2 weeks later, Sophia stood backstage at Carnegie Hall, hardly believing the circumstances. Miguel, smallest of her triplets, walked confidently onto the renowned stage, violin in hand. As a special guest performer with a professional quartet, he represented the youngest musician ever to play in their seasonal program. when he drew his bow across the strings, producing notes of such emotional depth that seasoned musicians in the audience exchanged astonished glances. Sophia pressed her hand to her mouth to stifle a sob of pride. This child, once fighting for life in an incubator, now created beauty that moved hundreds to tears. Raphael's moment came differently. At the annual Young Innovators Showcase, he demonstrated an app he had created entirely himself, a program that helped children with social anxiety find compatible friends through shared interests rather than forced interactions. "I made this because sometimes it's hard to know who to talk to," he explained to the judges with disarming simplicity. "This helps kids find others who understand them." When one judge asked about the complex algorithm driving the compatibility matching, Raphael explained the mathematical principles with such clarity that several adult engineers in the audience began taking notes. Between the boys' achievements and Sophia Rise's growth, media attention became inevitable. Local news features led to national interest, and soon Sophia found herself navigating a new challenge, protecting her children's privacy while sharing her company's mission. "Ms. Martinez, how do you manage motherhood and a rapidly growing tech company?" The question, always asked, never varying, came during an interview with Technology Today. Before Sophia could answer, the journalist continued, "And may I say, you look amazing. What's your beauty secret?" Sophia's polite smile remained fixed, though her frustration simmered beneath the surface. Male CEOs were asked about strategy and vision. She was asked about childcare arrangements and skincare routines. "My secret is 14-hour workdays and absolute dedication to our mission," she replied evenly. "Now, about our new housing partnership program." The housing initiative became Sophia Rise's most ambitious expansion yet. Partnering with a socially conscious real estate developer, Sophia broke ground on the first Sophia Rise Living Community, an affordable housing complex designed specifically for single-parent families with built-in childcare facilities and training programs. Standing at the construction site in a hard hat, reviewing architectural plans with the project manager, Sophia felt a profound satisfaction. The 50-unit building would provide safe, dignified housing for families who, like hers once was, were just one crisis away from homelessness. "We'll need to increase the childcare space," she indicated on the blueprint. "And the computer training lab should be directly adjacent. Mothers need to see their children while learning new skills." That evening, at their now comfortable apartment overlooking Central Park, a splurge Sophia had allowed only after securing Sophia Rise's financial stability, the triplets asked the question she had been anticipating with increasing dread. "Mom, can we do a DNA test?" Raphael asked, practical as always, "for the science fair project on genetics." "We want to know more about our paternal heritage," Gabriel added. His vocabulary advanced even for his 7 years. Sophia sat down on the sofa, gesturing for her sons to join her. The moment had come for more complete honesty. "Your father is a businessman from Boston named Jackson Reynolds," she explained gently. "He chose not to be part of our lives before you were born." "Does he know about us?" Miguel asked, his sensitive nature always concerned with emotions. "He knew I was pregnant," Sophia answered carefully, "but he decided that wasn't the life he wanted." "Is that why you work so hard?" Gabriel asked perceptively. "To prove him wrong?" Sophia considered the question, wanting her answer to shape their understanding of resilience rather than resentment. "I work hard because that's who I am," she finally replied. "His choice showed his character, not our worth. Remember that always." As Sophia Rise approached its 3rd anniversary, Sophia faced a decision that would define its future trajectory. Tech giant, one of the world's largest technology corporations, had offered to acquire Mother's Lift for $120 million, a sum that would ensure financial security for generations. The board meeting to discuss the offer turned contentious. External investors saw an extraordinary return opportunity. Sophia saw a potential compromise of their mission. "The offer from tech giant is $120 million. the lead investor stated flatly. "You would be foolish to refuse." Sophia remained silent, studying the faces around the conference table. Most had never experienced the desperation of the women Sophia Rise served. Most saw the platform as a successful business model rather than a lifeline. "Our mission is greater than money," she finally responded. "If tech giant absorbs us, they'll optimize for profit, not impact. We're not for sale." The decision preserved Sophia Rise's independence but required alternative revenue sources. Sophia launched the Sophia Rise Educational Foundation, pledging to fund 1,000 scholarships for children from single-parent households, creating opportunity for thousands like her sons. At the foundation's launch gala, Sophia found herself cornered by a journalist whose questions quickly veered from the foundation's mission to her personal appearance. "You've become something of a style icon for working mothers," he commented, eyes lingering inappropriately. "Tell our readers about balancing beauty routines with business demands." "Perhaps your readers would be more interested in how we're balancing our scholarship selection metrics to ensure diverse representation," Sophia countered smoothly. "Or how our housing program has reduced homelessness among single mothers by 22% in target communities." The journalist's smile tightened. "Of course, but our readers love inspiring stories. From Waitress to Wonder Woman, it's compelling." Later that night, after the boys were asleep, Sophia drafted a formal letter declining tech giant's acquisition offer. The decision would surprise many, perhaps even appear foolish to traditional business analysts. But it preserved the soul of what she had built. "Our mission is greater than money," she wrote. "Sophia Rise remains committed to independence in service of the communities we support." By refusing $120 million for the company she had built from nothing, Sophia was making a bet on herself that few understood. 3 years later, when Sophia Rise went public with a valuation of $2.8 billion, those same investors who had called her foolish now called her visionary. The gleaming glass tower on Fifth Avenue cast long shadows across the busy Manhattan streets below. From the 47th floor, Sophia Martinez stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of her corner office, the sprawling cityscape laid out before her like a living map of possibilities. The Sophia Rise Tower, a name that still occasionally struck her as surreal, had become a landmark in the New York skyline, its distinctive curved architecture symbolizing the upward journey from despair to triumph. "Arigato gozaimashita," Sophia concluded in carefully practiced Japanese, bowing slightly to the screen where 5 executives from Tokyo's largest venture capital firm nodded appreciatively. "We look forward to welcoming you to New York next month to finalize details." As the video conference ended, Sophia allowed herself a moment of quiet satisfaction. The expansion into the Asian market would bring Mother's Lift to millions of single mothers across Japan, South Korea, and Singapore in the coming quarter, another milestone in Sophia Rise's meteoric rise. "Ms. Martinez," her assistant's voice came through the intercom. "Your 3 o'clock with the foundation board is starting, and Gabriel's school called. He won the National Applied Mathematics competition again." Sophia smiled. "Tell them I'll be right there, and send Gabriel a congratulations bouquet to the school, the one with the mathematical equations made of flowers that he liked last time." At 39, Sophia had evolved into a formidable presence. Her wardrobe of meticulously tailored designer suits replaced the second-hand clothes of her struggling years. The exhaustion that had once been her constant companion had given way to a poised energy, her movements deliberate and confident. Only in rare, unguarded moments could one glimpse traces of the frightened young woman who had once stood in the rain with garbage bags containing her possessions. The Mother's Lift platform had revolutionized the concept of private social assistance, expanding far beyond its initial scope. Now valued at $3.8 billion, Sophia Rise Corporation had become a technological powerhouse connecting mothers in need with resources, flexible employment, and an international support network spanning 43 countries. The path to this summit had been littered with obstacles that would have deterred someone with less determination. Sophia vividly remembered the nights coding while her sons slept, the investor meetings where she arrived with 3 babies in tow, and the countless doors slammed in her face. An immigrant without technology experience? A single mother of triplets wanting to create a startup? Impossible. Those dismissive words had fueled her resolve rather than diminishing it. Every rejection became another reason to succeed, another voice to silence with achievement. The first major breakthrough had come unexpectedly. A prominent blogger had stumbled across Mother's Lift's beta version and shared her experience. The post went viral, bringing 50,000 downloads in a single day. Angel investors began circling. A seed funding round secured $500,000. A technology incubator offered mentorship and connections. As the company grew, Sophia still faced the daily challenges of raising 3 boys without help. Her schedule remained punishing, waking at 4:30 to work before the boys stirred, taking them to school by 7, working intensively until 5, then becoming a full-time mother until they slept at 8, when she would return to work until exhaustion claimed her. The elevator whisked Sophia to the 38th floor, where the Sophia Rise Foundation occupied a wing dedicated to its expanding educational programs. As she entered the boardroom, 10 directors rose respectfully, a diverse group of accomplished individuals who had been carefully selected for their commitment to the foundation's mission. "Our scholarship program has exceeded targets," Sophia announced, taking her seat at the head of the table. 50,000 students are now receiving educational support across the country. "I want to discuss expanding to international applicants next year." 2 hours later, Sophia's town car glided through midtown traffic toward Gabriel's award ceremony. Her phone buzzed with a text from Miguel, now a 15-year-old violin virtuoso who had been invited to perform with orchestras across Europe. "Killed it at rehearsal with NY Phil for tonight. Front row seat saved for you. Love you, Mom." Another message followed immediately from Raphael, whose coding prodigy had evolved into genuine innovation. "App update pushed to store. Fixed the algorithm like you suggested. 3 million downloads already." Sophia's chest swelled with pride. Her sons had grown into extraordinary young men, each cultivating their innate talents while maintaining the strong moral compass she had instilled in them. Gabriel's mathematical genius had led to publications in peer-reviewed journals before he turned 14. Miguel's sensitive musicality had blossomed into performances that moved hardened critics to tears. Raphael's pragmatic brilliance had already produced 5 commercially successful applications, the proceeds of which he had insisted on donating to the foundation. As the car approached the concert hall where Gabriel's award ceremony would be held, Sophia reviewed notes for her upcoming project, an investigative report in partnership with the New York Times on working conditions for immigrant women in luxury hotels. She would personally participate undercover as a cleaner, documenting firsthand the abusive conditions many women like her former self endured daily. "Ms. Martinez, are you sure you want to do this personally?" Caroline, her executive assistant, had asked when Sophia first outlined the plan. "You're the face of a billion-dollar company now." "Exactly why I must, Caroline," Sophia had replied. "I can never forget where I came from and who we fight for. Besides, no one pays attention to a Latina cleaner. I'll be invisible, as I once was." The car stopped at the Lincoln Center, where Gabriel would receive his award. Sophia tucked the false cleaning staff ID badge for the Plaza Hotel into her purse. Tomorrow she would begin her undercover investigation, documenting the experiences that connected her to thousands of invisible women still struggling as she once had. As Sophia entered the grand lobby, heads turned in recognition. The Latina Phoenix of Tech, as Forbes had dubbed her, no longer went unnoticed anywhere in New York. She nodded politely to those who greeted her, but her focus remained on finding her son amidst the crowd of young mathematical prodigies. Gabriel stood tall among his peers, his 15 years carried with unusual gravitas. Though identical to his brothers in appearance, his demeanor was distinctly his own, methodical, leadership-oriented, and unfailingly precise. When he spotted his mother, his serious expression melted into a warm smile that transformed his face. "Mom, I didn't think you'd make it with the Tokyo investors meeting today," he said, embracing her. "I would never miss this," Sophia replied, straightening his already perfect tie. "Though I will have to leave early to catch Miguel's performance with the Philharmonic." "Of course," Gabriel nodded. "Raphael's coming here after he finishes at the coding workshop. We'll meet you at the concert." Later that evening, as Sophia watched Miguel draw his bow across the strings, producing sounds of such emotional depth that seasoned musicians in the orchestra looked at him in wonder, her mind drifted briefly to Jackson Reynolds. Did he know what he had rejected? Could he possibly comprehend the extraordinary beings these three boys had become? The thought was fleeting. Jackson occupied very little space in her mental landscape these days. The wound of his rejection had long since scarred over, transformed into the foundation upon which she had built her empire. After the performance, surrounded by admirers congratulating Miguel, Sophia checked her phone to find an email confirming her undercover placement at the Plaza Hotel would begin tomorrow at noon, a 6-hour shift cleaning the grand ballroom in preparation for a high-profile event. "Perfect timing," she murmured, noting that the cleaning shift would end just before she needed to return to the same venue for the boys' academic honors ceremony scheduled in the grand ballroom that evening. What Sophia didn't know, couldn't know, was that the high-profile event was Jackson Reynolds' wedding to Vanessa Whitman, daughter of Senator Craig Whitman. The universe, with its peculiar sense of irony, had arranged for all the disparate threads of her past and present to converge in a single evening. The next morning, in her luxurious Central Park West penthouse, Sophia carefully applied makeup that aged her subtly, deepening lines around her eyes, dulling her complexion, adding shadows beneath her cheekbones. Dark contact lenses concealed her distinctive amber eyes. Her hair, normally worn in an elegant chignon, disappeared under a severe bun covered by a housekeeping cap. Designer clothes were replaced by the shapeless gray uniform of the plaza's cleaning staff. Standing before the mirror, Sophia barely recognized herself, which was precisely the point. For her investigative report to work, she needed to experience exactly what invisible workers endured without the protection of her name and status. "Remember every detail," she instructed herself. "Every dismissive glance, every unreasonable demand, every aching muscle." Sophia slipped the counterfeit ID badge around her neck, tucking her real credentials beneath it, a necessary precaution to avoid legal complications if discovered. The specialized glasses she wore contained tiny cameras that would document her experience, developed by Sophia Rise's R&D department specifically for this investigation. As Sophia left through the service entrance of her building, another authenticity measure for her documentation, she received a text from Gabriel. "Mom, don't forget our academic honors ceremony today. 7 p.m. at the Plaza Hotel Grand Ballroom. Miguel is performing the opening piece." Sophia smiled at the coincidence. "I'll be there, my love. Would never miss it," she replied, not mentioning that she would already be in the very same room, albeit in a very different capacity. The service entrance of the plaza bustled with activity as staff prepared for the evening's events. Sophia blended seamlessly with the other housekeepers, keeping her head down, adopting the slightly hunched posture of someone accustomed to being overlooked. The supervisor barely glanced at her ID before assigning her to the grand ballroom team. For the next several hours, Sophia experienced firsthand what she had once lived daily: the physical toll of constant bending and lifting, the dismissive treatment from supervisors, the expectation of invisibility when guests entered the space. Her cameras captured it all. Housekeepers denied water breaks, immigrant workers threatened with deportation for sitting down, women working through obvious pain to avoid losing desperately needed income. As the afternoon progressed, Sophia observed the transformation of the grand ballroom for what was clearly an extravagant wedding. Crystal chandeliers sparkled above tables adorned with elaborate orchid and rose centerpieces. Name cards at the head table revealed the event: the Reynolds-Whitman wedding. The name registered distantly in Sophia's mind. Reynolds was common enough, and she was too focused on documenting working conditions to make the connection. She continued her work, methodically cleaning areas already spotless, capturing the absurd standards demanded of workers paid barely minimum wage. What Sophia couldn't know was that in a private suite upstairs, Jackson Reynolds adjusted his custom tuxedo, rehearsing his vows to Vanessa Whitman, a strategic union meant to strengthen his company's political connections through her father's senatorial influence. The Reynolds enterprises had expanded into luxury condominium development across 3 continents but had never achieved the disruptive innovation status that might have made Jackson feel accomplished in his own right, rather than merely his father's successor. As evening approached and guests began arriving for the ceremony, Sophia continued her work in an unobtrusive corner of the ballroom, documenting how staff were treated as the room filled with Manhattan's elite. Her shift would end at 6, giving her just enough time to change in the staff restroom before returning as herself for the boys' ceremony scheduled in the same space at 7, after the wedding but before the dinner reception. What neither Sophia nor Jackson could possibly anticipate was that within hours, 15 years of carefully maintained separation would collapse in a moment of recognition that would shatter the elaborate facades they had constructed around their shared past. While the Forbes magazine circulated through American corporate elite hands, Jackson Reynolds stared, stunned, not only at the face of the woman he had abandoned pregnant, but also at the faces of 3 young men who were undeniably his sons, a printed reunion that foreshadowed the personal collision approaching. The glossy cover of Forbes magazine stared back at Jackson Reynolds from his mahogany desk, Sophia's confident smile unsettling him in ways he couldn't immediately articulate. It had been 15 years since that rainy night in Boston, yet her eyes held the same determined glint, amplified now by unmistakable success. But it wasn't her image alone that caused his coffee cup to slip slightly from his fingers. It was the 3 young faces beside her, identical boys with startlingly familiar blue eyes. His eyes. "What the hell?" he muttered, pulling the magazine closer. The headline proclaimed her the Latina Phoenix of Tech, and the subheading mentioned her extraordinary journey from abandoned pregnant waitress to billionaire tech innovator. His eyes darted to the caption beneath the family photo: Martinez and her 15-year-old triplet sons, Gabriel, Miguel, and Rafael, at the Sophia Rise headquarters. Triplets. The word echoed in his mind as a cold weight settled in his stomach. She had been carrying 3 children that night. His children. Jackson buzzed his assistant. "Sandra, get me Blackwood Investigations on the line, immediately." 2 days later, Jackson sat in the discreet office of Blackwood Investigations, reviewing the preliminary report their top investigator had compiled on Sophia Martinez and her sons. Sophia Rise Corporation, valued at $3.2 billion. The app serves approximately 12 million users across 43 countries. Her foundation has provided educational grants to 50,000 students. The triplets attend Westmore Academy for gifted students. Gabriel specializes in mathematics, won 6 national competitions. Miguel is a violinist who has performed with major orchestras. Rafael has developed multiple successful applications. The investigator paused, studying Jackson's increasingly pale complexion. "Would you like me to continue, Mr. Reynolds?" Jackson nodded stiffly, his knuckles white around the folder's edge. The boys' birth certificates list no father. DNA testing would be required to establish paternity legally, though the physical resemblance is notable. The investigator cleared his throat. "Ms. Martinez appears to have never spoken publicly about their paternity, though she doesn't hide that she was abandoned while pregnant." "I want everything," Jackson said, finding his voice. "Their routines, school schedules, activities. Absolute discretion is paramount." Across Manhattan, Sophia stood in a conference room at the New York Stock Exchange, finalizing preparations for Sophia Rise's impending initial public offering. Financial advisors and board members surrounded the large table, reviewing projected valuations and share allocations. "We want 30% of shares reserved for female investors and employees," Sophia instructed, ignoring the raised eyebrows from the more traditional financial advisors. "This company was built to empower women. Our IPO should reflect that mission." "Ms. Martinez," a silver-haired advisor began cautiously, "while we admire your commitment to social impact, perhaps a more conventional approach would contradict everything we stand for," Sophia finished firmly. "This isn't negotiable, Charles. Sophia Rise goes public our way, or we find underwriters who understand our values." The room fell silent before the lead banker nodded. "We'll make it happen." That evening, the triplets gathered around the kitchen island in their Central Park penthouse as Sophia prepared dinner, a ritual she maintained despite having a private chef on call. Some traditions from their humbler beginnings remained sacred. "Mom, the DNA results came back," Raphael announced, setting his tablet on the counter. 99.9% confirmation we're half Dominican, half British." "Are you surprised?" Sophia asked, adding fresh cilantro to the sofrito. "Not about the heritage," Gabriel replied thoughtfully. "But it's interesting to see the genetic markers for mathematical ability. All three of us have them." "And the musical ones," Miguel added, "though I'm the only one who developed them." He playfully nudged Raphael, who rolled his eyes. Sophia's phone rang, her foundation director with news about a major donation, as the boys continued examining their genetic report, unaware of how the other half of their DNA was currently scrambling to insert himself into their meticulously constructed lives. In Boston, Jackson sat alone in his expansive office, the Reynolds Enterprises quarterly report open before him. The numbers told a concerning story. Sales down 20%, innovation stagnant, competitors outpacing their once dominant position in luxury real estate. "The board is requesting a strategy revision," his CFO explained during their morning meeting. "We need either significant innovation or strategic partnerships to maintain market position." The unspoken truth hung between them. Reynolds Enterprises, for all its old money prestige, was being left behind in a rapidly evolving market. Jackson's thoughts drifted to Sophia Rise's valuation, nearly 4 times that of his family's century-old company. How had she done it? The waitress he had dismissed as never enough had built something he couldn't match with all his advantages, connections, and inherited wealth. Meanwhile, Sophia began her undercover work at the Plaza Hotel, donning the gray uniform and practical shoes of the housekeeping staff. With specialized camera glasses recording everything, she scrubbed bathrooms and changed linens alongside undocumented workers, documenting 14-hour shifts without breaks and supervisors who threatened deportation for the slightest infraction. "How long have you worked here?" Sophia asked a young Salvadoran woman in Spanish as they changed sheets together. 3 years, the woman replied quietly. 7 days a week. No sick days allowed. Sophia nodded, remembering her own desperate days. "Do they pay overtime?" The woman's bitter laugh was answer enough. That same afternoon, Gabriel represented Westmore Academy at the National Mathematics Championship held at the Plaza Hotel's Conference Center. The prestigious competition drew gifted students from across the country, with corporate sponsors, including Reynolds Enterprises, providing scholarships to winners. Unknown to either of them, Jackson was in the same building attending a real estate developers conference. As Gabriel received his first-place trophy in the main ballroom, Jackson delivered a keynote address about luxury development trends 3 floors above. Their paths nearly crossed in the grand lobby. Jackson heading to a business lunch, Gabriel calling his brothers to share news of his victory. They passed within feet of each other, both feeling an inexplicable sense of familiarity that each dismissed in the moment's rush. Had either turned fully, the resemblance would have been unmistakable, but timing preserved their separation for a few weeks longer. That evening, Sophia gathered the boys for a serious conversation in their home library. The DNA test results had prompted questions she had anticipated for years. "I believe our paths may cross with your biological father soon," she began carefully, displaying several photos of Jackson Reynolds on the large screen. "His name is Jackson Reynolds. He runs Reynolds Enterprises, a real estate development company based in Boston." The boys studied the images with different reactions. Miguel's face showing emotional conflict, Raphael analyzing with clinical detachment, Gabriel's expression hardening protectively. "He looks like us," Miguel observed quietly. "Why tell us now?" Gabriel asked, his arm instinctively going around Miguel's shoulders. Sophia chose her words carefully. "Because you deserve to know your complete history, and because New York is smaller than it seems. Our worlds are increasingly overlapping in business and social circles." "Has he tried to contact us?" Raphael questioned pragmatically. "No," Sophia answered truthfully. "But I've recently become aware that he knows about you now." Gabriel's posture stiffened. "He doesn't deserve to know our family." "That's not for me to decide," Sophia replied gently. "Each of you may form your own opinions and make your own choices when and if the time comes." The conversation continued late into the night, Sophia answering every question with honesty about how she'd met Jackson, their relationship, and his rejection when she told him about the pregnancy. She shared facts without vindictiveness, allowing her sons to form their own judgments. Meanwhile, across town, Jackson Reynolds researched elite schools for gifted children in Manhattan, piecing together the academic trajectories of the sons he had never known. A notification on his phone alerted him to Sophia Rise's upcoming IPO date. The company would go public in 3 weeks, with projections valuing it at nearly $4 billion. The contrast between his declining fortunes and her ascending star was not lost on him. 15 years ago, he had been the successful heir with everything. She had been the disposable waitress with nothing. Now their positions had fundamentally reversed. In the final week before Sophia Rise's IPO, Sophia worked around the clock, finalizing regulatory details and preparing for the momentous event. The night before the offering, she gathered her original team, the first 5 employees who had believed in her vision when it was nothing more than an idea run from a tiny Brooklyn apartment. "Tomorrow changes everything and nothing," she told them, raising a glass in her private office. "We'll have new resources, new responsibilities, and new challenges. But our mission remains exactly the same as when we worked from my kitchen table, to elevate those who society tries to keep down." Monica, her first hire and now chief operating officer, wiped away tears. "From a tiny office in Brooklyn to the New York Stock Exchange, Sophia, you actually did it." "We did it," Sophia corrected. "Every one of us." The historic day dawned clear and bright. Sophia stood in her closet, selecting her outfit with particular care, a custom Chanel suit in deep blue that conveyed both authority and authenticity. The triplets entered, already dressed in matching suits that had been tailored to their rapidly growing teenage frames. "Ready to make history, Mom?" Gabriel asked, straightening his tie. "With you 3 beside me?" Sophia smiled. "I've been ready for 15 years. The scene at the New York Stock Exchange was electric with anticipation. Technology IPOs were common, but Sophia Rise represented something different. A company built explicitly to serve an underrepresented market, founded by an immigrant single mother, with a unique corporate structure that guaranteed continued focus on social impact alongside profit. Financial news channels broadcast live as Sophia and the triplets approached the podium. Cameras flashed as she prepared to ring the bell that would officially open trading on Sophia Rise shares. "Today marks not just the public offering of a company," Sophia spoke clearly into the microphone, "but the validation of a belief that business can elevate lives, that profit and purpose can coexist, and that no one should be defined by their circumstances but by their persistence." With her sons at her side, Sophia rang the bell. Applause erupted as the first share prices appeared on the board, opening 30% above even the most optimistic projections. In his Boston office, Jackson Reynolds watched the ceremony on CNBC, the remote control tight in his grip. The triplets' resemblance to him was undeniable on the high-definition screen. Their poised confidence, standing beside the woman he had once discarded, triggered emotions he couldn't fully identify: regret, anger, envy, and something approaching awe. As trading commenced and Sophia Rye's shares soared, Jackson reached for his phone and dialed his assistant. "I need you to arrange a meeting with Sofia Martinez," he instructed, his voice revealing none of the turmoil beneath. "Make it happen." When the hammer struck the New York Stock Exchange and Sophia Rye's officially became a publicly traded company valued in billions, Sophia had no idea that Jackson Reynolds had already drawn up a plan to re-enter her life, just as she was about to infiltrate his wedding in disguise. The grand ballroom of the Plaza Hotel sparkled under crystalline chandeliers, a sea of white orchids and pale roses transforming the historic space into an ethereal garden. White-gloved staff circulated with trays of champagne among Manhattan's elite, their movements choreographed with practiced precision. Outside, a light summer rain tapped against the windows, creating a cocoon of luxury separated from the ordinary world. Jackson Reynolds surveyed the scene from the entrance, adjusting his Armani tuxedo cuffs with habitual precision. At 47, his dark hair now featured distinguished silver at the temples, lending gravitas to his still handsome features. He nodded approvingly at the immaculate execution of the wedding plans, the precisely folded napkins, the perfectly centered floral arrangements, the subtle Reynolds Enterprises logo embossed on the program cards. Control and perfection, always his requirements. "Darling, the senator wants a word before the ceremony begins." Vanessa Whitman, his bride-to-be, approached with practiced grace. Her custom Vera Wang gown whispered against the marble floor, diamonds glittering at her throat, old money meeting new in an alliance both families had eagerly engineered. "Of course," Jackson replied, checking his Patek Philippe watch, the same model he'd worn 15 years ago in that Boston penthouse, though he never made the connection. The ceremony starts in 40 minutes. Across the ballroom, nearly invisible in her gray uniform, Sofia Martinez carefully wiped down a service table. Her hair was pulled back in a severe bun, dark contact lenses concealing her distinctive amber eyes, subtle makeup adding years to her face. The specialized glasses recording her experience captured every detail of the workers' conditions. The aching backs, the blistered feet, the supervisors barking orders in demeaning tones. 6 hours into her shift, Sophia felt genuine exhaustion, a physical reminder of the life she'd once lived. "Mas rapido," a floor manager snapped at a group of cleaners. "The wedding guests are arriving. You should be invisible." Sophia ducked her head submissively, playing her role while her cameras captured everything. She moved to a peripheral table, methodically polishing already gleaming surfaces while observing a young Honduran woman being scolded for taking a water break. The special eyeglasses recorded it all, evidence for the exposé that would eventually improve conditions for women like these, women she had once been. "To the Reynolds-Whitman family!" Senator Craig Whitman's voice boomed through the ballroom as the pre-ceremony reception reached its peak. He raised his crystal champagne flute, commanding attention with the practiced ease of a career politician. "May this union bring prosperity and heirs that perpetuate our legacies." Jackson smiled automatically, the expression not quite reaching his eyes. Children, heirs. The words now carried an uncomfortable weight he couldn't share with anyone in this room, not even his bride. 3 heirs already existed, unknown to everyone in his circle. 3 15-year-old boys with his eyes and someone else's determination. His gaze drifted absently across the ballroom, momentarily catching on the figure of a maid working quietly in the corner. Something about her posture triggered a distant memory he couldn't place, a déjà vu that pricked at his consciousness before dissolving as Vanessa reclaimed his attention. The side doors of the grand ballroom swung open as staff prepared for the transition from reception to ceremony. Jackson noticed a group of young men in formal attire entering, apparently part of some academic event scheduled to use the adjacent salon after his wedding. Leading the group were three identical teenagers, their confident posture and striking features immediately drawing attention. "Quite the entrance," Thomas Willis, Jackson's best man and Harvard roommate, murmured beside him. "Those must be the scholarship recipients for tonight's academic honors." Jackson nodded distractedly, his attention caught by the young violinist setting up near the temporary stage. The boy moved with fluid grace, adjusting his instrument with expert precision, his profile hauntingly familiar. The first notes of Vivaldi filled the air as the young musician began playing, his expression one of complete absorption. The wedding guests quieted, many turning to appreciate the unexpected musical interlude as they took their seats for the ceremony. "Jack," Thomas whispered, leaning closer. "That violinist, isn't he one of the prodigy kids from Sophia Rise? The company run by that immigrant woman who became a billionaire?" Jackson froze, his champagne glass suddenly unsteady in his hand. Sophia Rise? The name sent an electric current through his body. "What coincidence is this?" "Not a coincidence at all," Thomas continued, oblivious to Jackson's growing discomfort. "It's in this month's Forbes. Sophia Martinez built a tech empire from nothing while raising triplets on her own. Quite the inspirational story." "Triplets?" Jackson's voice cracked slightly, his eyes darting back to the young violinist, then to the two identical boys waiting at the side of the room. "Yes, those three identical boys. The violinist and the two others standing there. They say they're geniuses, all three. The mother never revealed who the father is, but—" Jackson heard nothing more. The room seemed to compress around him as his gaze jumped frantically between the boys and the maid working in the corner. Time crystallized into perfect, terrible clarity as the pieces aligned in his mind. That walk, that posture even disguised by the uniform. The same name, the same timing. Three young men with his eyes. "My God," he whispered, rising abruptly from his seat. "Is that Sophia? Am I seeing a ghost, or is that the waitress I got pregnant?" Vanessa looked up with concern, her perfectly sculpted brows drawing together. "Jackson, is everything all right, darling? You look pale." Gabriel finished his acceptance speech for the Mathematics Excellence Award, his poised delivery earning enthusiastic applause. Jackson barely registered the young man's words about the power of resilience learned from an extraordinary mother. As if in a trance, Jackson moved across the ballroom toward the maid who had retreated to a less illuminated area, apparently trying to avoid notice. His heart hammered against his ribs, each step carrying him toward a past he had buried beneath 15 years of deliberate forgetting. "Sophia?" he called, his voice barely audible over the ambient noise. She turned slowly, removing the dark glasses, revealing the eyes he had never forgotten, now hardened by experience and power. "Jackson Reynolds," she replied, not as a question but as a cold statement of fact. "You seem surprised to see someone from your past cleaning floors. Curious, considering that was exactly what you expected me to do for the rest of my life." You're really Sophia Martinez? The CEO of Sophia Rise?" The words sounded absurd even as he spoke them. A humorless smile curved her lips. "Ironic, isn't it? The woman who would never be enough built something your inherited fortune never managed to equal." Their conversation was interrupted as Raphael approached, concern evident on his young face. "Are you all right, ma'am? I saw you forgot your medication in the staff room when you helped us yesterday." The teenager glanced suspiciously at Jackson. "I'm fine, thank you," Sophia replied, maintaining her cover while Jackson stared in stunned silence at the adolescent who was his mirror image at 15. "Dad, is everything okay?" Vanessa approached, followed by her father and several influential guests. "Who is this employee?" The tension was palpable. The entire ballroom seemed to have fallen silent, though only the immediate circle was aware of the drama unfolding. "Vanessa, Jackson began, but was interrupted by Gabriel joining his brother. "Hey, you're the lady who helped us yesterday at the hotel," Gabriel exclaimed, recognizing Sophia despite her disguise. "But you seem unwell." Indeed, Sophia had suddenly paled, a combination of genuine exhaustion after hours of investigative work and the emotional impact of the confrontation. She swayed slightly, accidentally knocking over a serving tray, revealing the authentic ID badge she kept hidden beneath her false one for the investigation. Simultaneously, Miguel joined his brothers, the three now forming an instinctive protective barrier around the woman who had begun to falter. "Mother?" Miguel exclaimed, finally recognizing Sophia beneath the disguise, his voice carrying clearly in the now hushed vicinity. "Mother!" echoed Vanessa, her gaze bouncing between Jackson and the triplets, whose facial features were unmistakably identical to her fiancé's. The room spun around Sophia as she struggled to maintain her composure. "Boys, I can explain. The disguise is for the Times investigation." "Wait, you're Sophia Martinez?" Senator Whitman stepped forward, his expression transforming from disdain to shocked recognition. "The CEO of Sophia Rise? What is the meaning of this, Jackson?" Before Jackson could formulate a response, Sophia collapsed completely, caught by her sons as murmurs rippled through the ballroom and smartphones began capturing the unfolding scene. "Call an ambulance!" Raphael shouted, his young face contorted with worry. Jackson remained frozen, watching helplessly as his past and present collided catastrophically, destroying in seconds the carefully constructed image he had maintained for decades. His phone vibrated incessantly in his pocket with incoming notifications, the first images already circulating on social media, with speculative headlines about the mysterious connection between the real estate magnate, the billionaire tech CEO disguised as a cleaner, and three teenagers extraordinarily identical to him. The wedding guests whispered among themselves, pieces of the puzzle falling into place as they recognized the famous entrepreneur now unconscious in the arms of three boys who could only be Jackson's sons. Vanessa stepped back, her expression hardening from confusion to comprehension to fury as she glanced between her fiancé and the unfolding scene. 15 years, Gabriel said, his voice low but carrying in the tense silence as medics rushed forward. 15 years, and you never once tried to find us. Jackson opened his mouth, but no words came. What could he possibly say to this young man? To any of them? The truth was written in their DNA, in their faces, in the unmistakable eyes that matched his own. Senator Whitman placed a protective arm around his daughter's shoulders, his political instincts immediately assessing the public relations disaster unfolding. "Jackson, I think you have some explaining to do. To all of us." But Jackson's attention remained fixed on Sophia's unconscious form and the three extraordinary young men protecting her, the four people who should have been his family, the alternate life he had rejected with cruel certainty 15 years ago. As paramedics arrived and began attending to Sophia, 15 years of secrets, lies, and separate lives collapsed like a house of cards while phones continued capturing the exact moment Jackson Reynolds on his wedding day confronted his past in the form of a woman he had discarded and three young men who unmistakably carried his DNA. A collective gasp swept through the grand ballroom as Sophia collapsed into her son's arms. The polished marble floor that had moments before reflected the opulent wedding decorations now became the stage for an unfolding drama that riveted every witness. Smartphones rose in unison, capturing the moment when 15 years of carefully constructed narratives shattered in an instant. "Give her space," Gabriel commanded, his 15-year-old voice carrying with surprising authority as he supported his mother's head. Despite his youth, he projected the unmistakable leadership that had always been his nature. Raphael had already pulled out his phone, speaking with remarkable composure to emergency services. Suspected exhaustion and dehydration. The patient is 41. No known allergies. Yes, at the Plaza Hotel Grand Ballroom. Miguel knelt beside his mother, gently checking her pulse with practiced movements. "It's steady," he reported to his brothers, his sensitive nature evident in the tremor of his voice despite his controlled exterior. Jackson stood frozen, a living statue in expensive tailoring, watching the scene unfold as if from a great distance. The practiced confidence that had carried him through boardrooms and social galas had evaporated, leaving him unmoored in the sudden collision of past and present. "Someone get her water," Vanessa said automatically, her social training taking over before the full reality of the situation reasserted itself. Her eyes darted between Jackson and the triplets, the undeniable resemblance making her stomach twist. "Jackson," she whispered, her voice hardening, "those boys look exactly like you." The hushed murmurs grew louder as recognition spread through the gathering. The wedding guests, New York's elite accustomed to discretion, abandoned pretense as they witnessed the unfolding scene. "That's Sofia Martinez," someone whispered loudly. "The Sophia Rise CEO. Why is she dressed as a cleaner? Those must be her sons. My God, they're the spitting image of Reynolds." Hotel security arrived, creating a perimeter around Sophia and the boys as paramedics pushed through the crowd with a stretcher. The well-orchestrated wedding had dissolved into chaos, the carefully planned ceremony forgotten as all attention focused on the unconscious woman and the 3 teenagers who looked uncannily like the groom. Vanessa's father, Senator Whitman, stepped forward, his political instincts immediately assessing the damage control needed. "Let's move this situation somewhere private," he suggested, his voice low but commanding. "Jackson, we need to talk, now." But Jackson remained fixed in place, watching as the paramedics efficiently transferred Sophia to a stretcher. The triplets never left her side, their protective formation unbroken, their eyes occasionally darting accusatory glances toward the man they had just discovered was their biological father. "I'll ride with her," Gabriel informed the paramedic, his tone brooking no argument despite his youth. "We're her sons," Raphael added, his pragmatic nature evident in his calm efficiency as he gathered Sophia's fallen ID badge and purse. "Family only in the ambulance," the paramedic confirmed, glancing at the crowd of onlookers. "We are her only family," Miguel said pointedly, his gaze finding Jackson's with devastating precision. The statement hung in the air, a public indictment that struck Jackson with physical force. 15 years of absence condensed into 5 words that defined the chasm between what was and what might have been. As the paramedics wheeled Sophia toward the exit, Vanessa approached Jackson, her wedding gown rustling with each deliberate step. Without a word, she removed the 6-carat diamond engagement ring and placed it in his palm, closing his fingers around it with surprising gentleness. "Jackson," she said, her voice steady despite the emotion beneath it, "my father just showed me the news alerts. Your name is trending in all the headlines and they're not favorable." Indeed, Jackson's phone had not stopped vibrating with notifications. A public relations nightmare was unfolding in real time across social media and news outlets. CEO billionaire collapses at wedding of man who abandoned her pregnant. Real estate magnate hid children for 15 years while ex built empire. Prodigy triplets discover father at his own wedding. "You don't understand," Jackson finally spoke, his voice hoarse with strain. "I was young, scared. My father's company was in crisis. I couldn't risk the scandal of a relationship with an immigrant employee." The explanation that had seemed reasonable 15 years ago now sounded hollow and cruel even to his own ears. Vanessa's expression confirmed its inadequacy. "Interesting that you mentioned the company," came a young voice from behind them. Raphael had returned, apparently to retrieve something left behind in the confusion. The teenager's analytical gaze assessed Jackson with unnerving precision. "The Sophia Rise empire is valued at $3.2 billion. Our educational foundation has helped 50,000 students, and our mother has been on the Forbes list for 5 years. The Reynolds Enterprises is valued at $880 million. Mathematically speaking, you would have benefited financially by staying with her. Jackson felt heat rising to his face. This isn't about money, he exclaimed, losing composure for the first time. Exactly, Raphael replied, his calm demeanor a stark contrast to Jackson's agitation. It never was about money. It was about character. Our mother taught us that a person's value isn't in their surname or bank account, but in the values they uphold, a lesson you clearly never learned. The corridor suddenly buzzed with activity as a group of executives in suits hurried toward Jackson, led by Diane Mercer, the CFO of Reynolds Enterprises. "Jackson, we need to speak urgently," Diane said, her professional tone barely concealing panic. "The board is in emergency teleconference. Our stock has plummeted 18% in the last hour since the news broke. Investors are threatening to withdraw support for the Dubai project." Jackson closed his eyes momentarily, the full weight of the situation crushing down. His empire, his reputation, his marriage, all simultaneously crumbling around him. Inside the hotel room that had been converted to a temporary medical space, Sophia slowly regained consciousness, her eyes adjusting to the soft lighting. She immediately recognized the familiar presence beside her bed. "Dr. Chen," she acknowledged her friend and attorney who had been with her since Boston. "Are the boys all right?" "They're fine, Sophia. Extraordinary as always. Handling the situation better than most adults would." Eliza Chen smiled, adjusting the IV drip. "Your ex is in the corridor trying to speak with you." Sophia sighed, the exhaustion evident in every line of her normally determined face. 15 years too late. The boys showed him the dossier we keep, the one you never wanted to use. It was never about revenge, Eliza. It was about survival, then prosperity, then legacy. Sophia adjusted herself on the bed. "They have the right to know their origins. They always have. I never prevented it." A gentle knock on the door announced the triplets' entrance, their young faces divided between concern and determination. "Mom?" Gabriel spoke for the three, as he often did. "He wants to talk to you. We told him the decision was yours." Sophia looked at her sons, her greatest treasure, the living proof that the greatest rejection of her life had transformed into her greatest blessing. "Let him in," she decided. "You can stay if you want." Jackson entered hesitantly, as if stepping into enemy territory. His gaze swept the luxurious hospital room, the state-of-the-art equipment, the three teenagers posted protectively around the bed, and finally settled on Sophia. No longer the frightened young waitress, but a woman of undeniable presence even in a hospital bed. "Sophia, he began, but words seemed inadequate against the magnitude of the moment. "You thought I wasn't enough," Sophia finally spoke, her voice calm, without a trace of anger or resentment. Just a factual statement that was somehow more devastating than any accusation. "But I built something that even in your most grandiose dreams you couldn't achieve, not for revenge, but because you showed me exactly the kind of person I never wanted to become." A nurse entered, interrupting the moment. "Mrs. Martinez, your test results are excellent. You're cleared for discharge tomorrow morning, with a recommendation for rest." "Thank you, Carlos," Sophia responded. "I want to be part of their lives," Jackson said abruptly, looking at his sons. "I can offer opportunities, connections, a family legacy." "A legacy?" Raphael laughed softly. "Mr. Reynolds, the Sophia Rise Foundation has already secured our future and that of thousands of other children. What specific legacy do you propose that would be superior to what we already have?" "Money isn't an issue for us," added Miguel. "And as for connections, the waiting list to intern at our mother's company has 3,000 names, including children of senators and CEOs. And about family," concluded Gabriel, "we've learned that family consists of the people who stay when everyone else leaves. You were the first to leave." Jackson then realized the magnitude of his error, not just the physical abandonment 15 years earlier, but the catastrophically wrong assessment of Sophia's potential. He had discarded not just an extraordinary woman, but the chance to participate in raising 3 exceptional young men. He had rejected what could have been his greatest personal and professional success. "I understand if you hate me," he finally said. "Hating would require you to be important in our lives," Sophia replied with surprising gentleness. "You're just a footnote in the story we've built. We don't hate you, Jackson. We simply moved on." Her phone rang and Gabriel answered, putting it on speaker. "Mom, it's Mark Zuckerberg about acquiring the AI division. Should I say you'll return his call tomorrow?" In that moment, the contrast couldn't have been clearer. While Jackson's empire crumbled in the corridor, with desperate executives and plummeting stocks, Sophia remained the gravitational center of a thriving universe even from a hospital bed. "Mr. Reynolds," called an assistant from the doorway, "the board is requesting your immediate presence. The emergency CEO replacement vote began 5 minutes ago." Jackson looked one last time at the family that could have been his: Sophia, serene in her unintentional victory, the 3 sons who were his physical reflection but the opposite of his character, the empire built from nothing that completely eclipsed his achievements. "I really lost everything, didn't I?" he murmured, more to himself than to them. "On the contrary," Sophia answered, her tone surprisingly devoid of malice. "You gained exactly what you chose 15 years ago: complete independence from us." When the door closed behind Jackson, there was no anger in the room, just a quiet certainty that justice doesn't always come as revenge, but as the natural consequence of choices made. The Martinez-Reynolds family existed only in name, but the Martinez family was complete, whole, and victorious in every way that mattered. "So," Sophia smiled at her sons, "who wants to tell me about the awards you received while I was busy fainting in the middle of the most dramatic investigation of my career?" The 3 smiled back, the tension dissolving in their collective love, while outside, Jackson Reynolds faced the emptiness of his choices, not as a victim, but as the architect of his own solitude. The antiseptic smell of the hospital room had faded overnight, replaced by the subtle fragrance of fresh flowers that filled the private suite at New York Presbyterian. Sophia sat on the edge of the bed, already dressed in a simple but elegant Chanel suit that Monica had brought from her penthouse. The doctors had confirmed what she already knew: exhaustion and dehydration, nothing more serious. And she was eager to return to her life, to process everything that had happened at the plaza. "The car is waiting downstairs, Ms. Martinez," said the nurse, entering with discharge papers. "Your sons asked me to tell you they're bringing breakfast." Sophia smiled, signing the forms with practiced efficiency. Less than 24 hours had passed since her world had collided with Jackson's, yet somehow she felt lighter, as if a shadow she hadn't realized was following her had finally dissolved in daylight. The corridor outside her room hummed with unusual activity. Through the partially open door, Sophia could see hospital security managing a small crowd of reporters who had somehow discovered her location. More surprisingly, she glimpsed the 3 identical figures of her sons forming a human barricade several yards from her door, effectively blocking someone from approaching, someone whose voice she recognized immediately. "Please, I just want 5 minutes," Jackson pleaded, his normally commanding tone reduced to something almost desperate. "I have a right to explain myself." "Rights are earned, not demanded," Gabriel replied, his young voice steady. 15 years of absence doesn't grant you 5 minutes of her time." Sophia took a deep breath and walked to the doorway. The tableau before her captured perfectly the extraordinary situation. 3 15-year-old boys, still in their formal attire from the previous evening, though somewhat rumpled from a night spent at the hospital, standing shoulder to shoulder against Jackson Reynolds, who looked equally disheveled in his expensive suit, his tie loosened and hair uncharacteristically unkempt. "It's all right, boys," she said quietly. "I can handle this." The triplets exchanged glances, their silent communication perfected over years. Gabriel nodded slightly and they stepped aside, though they remained within protective distance. Jackson stepped forward, the confident stride that had once intimidated boardrooms now hesitant. His appearance shocked Sophia, not because he looked tired or stressed, but because for the first time she saw him clearly without the distorting lens of either love or resentment. He was just a man, privileged, flawed, and suddenly facing the consequences of a decision made with cruel certainty 15 years earlier. "Sophia," he began, then faltered, looking at the triplets who watched him with identical expressions of assessment. "Could we speak privately?" "These are my sons," she replied simply. "There are no secrets between us." The emphasis on "my" wasn't lost on anyone. Jackson nodded, accepting the boundary. "The board meeting lasted until 3 in the morning, he said, running a hand through his silver-streaked hair. "They've voted to replace me as CEO. Temporarily, they claim, until the situation stabilizes." Sophia nodded, unsurprised. "Public relations crises require sacrificial lambs. I'm familiar with the corporate playbook." "Vanessa has postponed the wedding indefinitely," Jackson continued. "Her father suggested a cooling-off period while their family assesses the situation." "You mean while they determine if being connected to you remains advantageous?" Raphael observed clinically. Jackson didn't deny it. "The Dubai investors have put our development on hold. Our stock dropped 22% at closing." He looked directly at Sophia. "Your company's share price, meanwhile, rose 4% after opening bell this morning." A small, ironic smile touched Sophia's lips. "The market appreciates resilience and authenticity, 2 qualities I had to develop after you threw me out with garbage bags in the rain." The words landed like a physical blow. Jackson visibly flinched, his eyes darting to the triplets, who showed no surprise at their mother's statement. Clearly, they knew the full story of their origins. "I've made terrible mistakes," Jackson admitted, his voice hollow. "Unforgivable ones. But I want a chance to know my sons." "They're not possessions to be claimed when convenient," Sophia replied, her tone even. "They're extraordinary human beings who have grown into men of character without your input or influence." "I understand that," Jackson said, a note of genuine humility entering his voice. "I'm not asking to suddenly become their father. I know that role has to be earned. I'm just asking for a chance to meet them properly, to learn who they are." Before Sophia could respond, Dr. Eliza Chen approached from the elevator bank, carrying a tablet filled with incoming communications requiring attention. "The Times editor wants to know if you're continuing the hotel investigation," she reported professionally. "And the Sophia Rise board has called an emergency meeting for tomorrow to discuss the unexpected publicity." "Tell them I'll be in the office this afternoon," Sophia replied. "You're supposed to rest," Miguel protested, his concerned eyes so like his father's that the parallel momentarily caught Sophia off guard. "I'll rest at home while reviewing the quarterly projections," she compromised, then turned back to Jackson. "As for your request, it's not my decision to make." She looked at her sons. "Each of you is old enough to decide whether you want any form of relationship with your biological father. I won't influence that choice either way." The triplets straightened, the responsibility of adult decision-making sitting naturally on their young shoulders. "I'd like to know about my paternal genetic history," Raphael said pragmatically, "for medical and scientific purposes." "I have questions," Gabriel acknowledged, his protective nature evident in his guarded stance. "But I make no promises beyond a conversation." Miguel, always the most emotionally intuitive, studied Jackson's face before speaking. "I'd like to understand who you are, to know that part of my origins." Jackson's relief was palpable, though tempered by the conditional nature of their acceptance. "Thank you. That's more than I deserve." "Yes, it is," Gabriel confirmed without malice, simply stating a fact. A week later, Sophia stood before a forest of microphones in the Sophia Rise headquarters press room. The media frenzy following the Plaza incident had intensified after someone leaked surveillance footage of the moment the triplets had recognized their mother beneath her disguise, with Jackson's shocked expression clearly visible. Speculation had run rampant, with tabloids constructing increasingly dramatic narratives about their past relationship. Rather than hide, Sophia had decided to address the situation directly, on her terms. The room was packed with journalists, cameras tracking her every movement as she approached the podium in a simple but elegant navy dress that projected both authority and authenticity. "Thank you all for coming," she began, her voice steady. "I'm not here to accuse or expose. I'm here to speak about forgiveness and moving forward." A ripple of surprise moved through the assembled press. They had expected either scandalous revelations or corporate damage control, not this. 15 years ago, I faced the greatest challenge of my life as a pregnant immigrant abandoned by someone I trusted. That experience shaped me, but it doesn't define me or my children. We built our lives through perseverance, not victimhood. She paused, her gaze sweeping the room with quiet confidence. "Jackson Reynolds and I have reached a private understanding regarding the past. He has agreed to fund the expansion of the Sophia Rise Foundation with $200 million, which will allow us to double our educational scholarships and housing programs for single-parent families." The announcement triggered a flurry of camera flashes and hurried typing as reporters updated their stories in real time. This wasn't the vengeful exposé they had anticipated, but something far more compelling, a redemption story with practical benefits for thousands of vulnerable families. "I won't be taking questions about personal matters," Sophia continued firmly. "My sons deserve privacy as they navigate their own relationships with their biological father. What I will discuss are the expansion plans for our foundation's work, which is the real story worth telling." For the next 30 minutes, Sophia outlined the ambitious growth of Sophia Rise's social impact programs, effectively redirecting the narrative from scandal to substantive change. By the time she concluded, the tone in the room had transformed from salacious interest to genuine engagement with her vision. Later that evening, in the privacy of their penthouse, Gabriel handed Sophia a tablet displaying the day's media coverage. "They're calling you gracious and visionary," he noted with a hint of pride. "Not a single outlet led with the scandal angle after your redirection." "Because Mom gave them a better story," Raphael observed from the kitchen island where he was coding. "Redemption and positive impact sell better than revenge." "Was it hard?" Miguel asked quietly, sitting beside Sophia on the sofa. "Facing all those cameras, knowing everyone was expecting you to attack him?" Sophia considered the question carefully. 15 years ago it would have been impossible. Today it was simply a strategic choice. Revenge perpetuates pain. Forgiveness ends it. "Is that why you accepted his foundation donation?" Gabriel asked. "As a form of forgiveness?" "I accepted it because $200 million will help thousands of families avoid what we went through," Sophia replied pragmatically. "His motivation, whether guilt, image rehabilitation, or genuine remorse, is secondary to the impact." 6 months later, Sophia stood on a temporary stage outside the newly completed Sophia Rise Center for Families in Queens, a comprehensive complex offering affordable housing, childcare facilities, job training, and support services for single-parent households. The spring sun warmed the gathered crowd as she prepared to cut the ceremonial ribbon. "This center represents everything we stand for," she told the assembled guests and media. "Not just support in crisis, but pathways to independence and dignity." The triplets, now approaching 16, stood tall beside her, 3 young men on the cusp of extraordinary futures, their matching blue eyes scanning the crowd with intelligent interest. Among the seated dignitaries in the 3rd row, rather than prominently placed in the front, sat Jackson Reynolds. His presence was neither highlighted nor hidden. He had contributed significantly to the center but had not insisted on recognition. Over the past months, he had met with each of the boys individually, beginning the complicated process of building relationships without expectations of immediate acceptance. Progress was slow but genuine, marked by occasional dinners and tentative shared interests, mathematical theory discussions with Gabriel, concert attendance with Miguel, and technology investment analysis with Raphael. As Sophia cut the ribbon to enthusiastic applause, Her gaze briefly met Jackson's across the distance. There was no animosity in the glance they exchanged, nor romantic rekindling, just the quiet acknowledgement of a circle completed. He nodded slightly, respect evident in his expression. The first residents began touring the facility, single mothers with children, their faces showing the same mix of determination and exhaustion Sophia had once worn. Watching her sons guide these families through the building, explaining the resources available with genuine empathy, Sophia felt a profound sense of completion. As she observed her 3 extraordinary sons welcoming the first residents of the Sophia Rise Center, she finally understood that the rainy night in Boston hadn't been the end of her dreams, but the true beginning. For sometimes it's only when we lose everything that we discover what we're truly capable of. If you enjoyed today's video, I'm sure you'll love the next one. Don't waste time. Just click on the screen.